A little over a year and a half ago, I created a video about the actress Blake Lively and how her behavior in a resurfaced interview from 2016 was an example of workplace bullying. Since I made that video, a lot has happened. You guys have been asking me for an update, so here it is. I will try to link to my original Blake Lively video in the description for this one. I'm very proud of that video and consider it some of my best work. It wasn't really about Blake Lively, but more about some of the points that I've been making about workplace bullying for years. I stand by every word of that video except for maybe Blake's astrology, which I think I got a little bit wrong. More on that later, because much of what I said actually turned out to be true, like the fact that there may have been some kind of campaign to expose Blake Lively, but not in the way that you think. And the fact that all of this was always about Taylor Swift, who has now been dragged into the drama just as I predicted. If you have been living under a rock and have no idea what's going on, Blake Lively is now involved in a major scandal and massive litigation that is scheduled to go to trial in May of this year, which I think is relevant to my channel because this is probably the worst case of workplace bullying that I have ever heard about. Commentary on the case has exploded all over the internet and it's complicated. I would argue that it's more complicated than Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Why? Depp Heard was also an example of narcissistic abuse, but it was a romantic relationship involving only two people. As I've always said, even though the overwhelming majority of narcissism-related content is about romantic relationships, narcissism in the workplace is more complicated because it's a group dynamic. There are a lot of moving parts. There's a lot going on because there are so many people involved. In this case, studio executives, publicists, journalists, influencers, and a host of other celebrities, including, above all, Taylor Swift. Before getting into this video, I would like to clarify what it isn't. I am not here to cover this case from any legal perspective for two reasons. Number one, I'm not an attorney, and number two, that's been done to death elsewhere, including right here on YouTube. Like I said, it's incredibly complicated, and I doubt that you can cover all the legal angles in only one video, which brings me to my next point. Why am I doing this now? Why not before? I will admit that when this case exploded at the end of 2024, I was on the fence for a long time. I only loosely followed the story throughout last year. I think our country had more pressing issues and avoided coming to any definitive conclusions because I'm a Libra rising. I don't like to take sides. However, in case you missed it, depositions for the trial began in January, and along with the transcripts of those depositions, a wealth of exhibits became publicly available. Those exhibits include email messages, voicemail messages, and enough text messages to outnumber War and Peace, and the tea is serving, y'all. After reviewing all of the documentation, I think I have a pretty clear idea of what is going on. And that is workplace bullying, just not in the way that you think. All of the documentation is publicly available on Court Listener. I'll try to link to that as well in the description. If you do not like to review legal documents or don't know how to, I will also leave links to some online sources that have been following the story, including the channel of Kirsty Flaw, the Norwegian reporter that Blake Lively bullied in 2016. Kirsty Flaw may have a bit of a bias because she had such an unpleasant experience with Blake. And I disagree with some of her messaging. However, I appreciate her investigative reporting and critical thinking skills. She now has over 300 videos about Blake Lively because the story really is that complicated. I think you don't need me to tell you to take any online resource, including me, with a grain of salt. Again, I'm not an attorney or a psychologist. What I am is an expert on workplace bullying based on my own experience of being bullied in the workplace for over 30 years and blogging and vlogging about workplace bullying for over a decade. And I think my astrology skills are pretty good. So I'm just here to offer my perspective based on workplace bullying and astrology. So if you're not into astrology, please feel free to click off right now before wasting my time with nasty comments about pseudoscience. I find the astrology of the major players involved incredibly interesting because I think it's very helpful at explaining exactly what is going on. Now, most of the online commentary about this case, this time I actually agree with, just not completely. I just think it doesn't go deep enough. It's like close but no cigar. So I hope that my videos will help clarify some things so we can get to the heart of the matter. With that being said, every word of this video is alleged for entertainment purposes only, and let's get into it. For those of you who are not au courant, Blake Lively is a 38-year-old American actress from an entertainment family in California. According to her IMDb, she's been in about a dozen feature films, but she is probably most famous for her role in the series Gossip Girl, which you can now watch in its entirety on Netflix. In addition to acting, she is a businesswoman, which is relevant, and she is probably less famous for her acting than she is for her relationships. Again, since 2012, she has been married to Canadian actor Ryan Reynolds, a rumored billionaire and major Hollywood heavyweight. They often appear on the red carpet together, and together are one of the few remaining power couples in the entertainment industry. And for about a decade, she was a BFF of Taylor Swift, who again has everything to do with this case. The opposing party is American actor Justin Baldoni, also from California, who is probably most famous for his role in the series Jane the Virgin, which you can also watch in its entirety on Netflix. Baldoni is also a social justice warrior who advocates for women's issues from a man's perspective. Because of his advocacy work, he purchased the film rights, which he began negotiating all the way back in January of 2019, so over 7 years ago, to a book called It Ends With Us, which is supposed to be about domestic violence, and he produced, directed, and starred in the film adaptation with Blake Lively opposite him as the film's two romantic leads. The film It Ends With Us is now also available on Netflix if you have the right plan. I've watched it twice. Like I said, it's supposed to be about domestic violence, but it comes off as more of a steamy 50 Shades-esque romantic drama about a woman who is caught between two men. Interesting. The DV element is ultimately minimized in favor of the visual aesthetics of the film, above all the fashion. I wonder why. And the plot is generally unrealistic. I think Dr. Romani did a video over on her channel about how It Ends With Us misrepresents domestic violence. As a romantic drama, it's not bad, but if the movie was supposed to represent domestic violence, it's a fail. If you are interested in the topic, a much more accurate depiction of domestic violence is also on Netflix. The series Maid stars Andie MacDowell's daughter, Margaret Qualley, another former BFF of Taylor Swift. Margaret Qualley made a steamy romantic drama in Panama with Taylor's boyfriend at the time, Joe Alwyn. And Taylor immediately intervened and set Margaret up with Jack Antonoff, Taylor's producer, and literally her only single straight male friend at the time, because that's what Taylor does. She's insanely jealous and insecure, and she manipulates people like pawns because she's chosen the game over art. Jack and Margaret got married in the summer of 2023, and Margaret has since exhibited discomfort around Taylor Swift, probably not because of Jack, but because of what Taylor did to Joe Alwyn on the Tortured Poets department. See my video about Taylor that no one watched. I would be surprised if Taylor and Margaret were still friends. Oh, what a tangled web we weave. Anyway, Maid is also based on a book written by a survivor. I actually watched it when I was working in the field of domestic violence, and I was astonished at how accurate it is, especially the part about the shelter. One thing that the movie It Ends With Us does get right is that it does show how two people with childhood trauma can become the abuser or the victim. One took the red pill and one took the blue pill. Anyway, filming of It Ends With Us began in the spring of 2023, and promotion of the film began in the summer of the following year. And that's when the public started to notice that something was wrong. Blake Lively was harshly criticized for her tone-deaf messaging during promotion of It Ends With Us. She said the now famous "grab your friends, wear your florals" line to encourage people to go see the movie, which many interpreted as a flippant tone for such a serious subject matter. She later said that she was told by executives to focus on the lighter, more rom-com aspects of the movie, something that she seems to think was done deliberately to make her look frivolous compared to Justin Baldoni, who got to discuss the more serious aspects of the movie. And she promoted her hair care line and even her alcohol brand. I told you she's a businesswoman. During the promotion of a movie about domestic violence, despite the statistical correlation between DV and substance abuse. She never attended any promotional events together with Baldoni, who promoted the film independently. And when the film premiered on August 6, 2024, Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni did not appear on the red carpet together. At almost exactly the same time, fans also noticed that almost the entire cast and crew unfollowed Justin Baldoni's social media. And everyone knew that there was a problem. Because of all this, backlash targeted at Blake Lively was already pretty heated when 4 days later, on August 10th, 2024, Kirsty Flaw, a Norwegian entertainment reporter based in LA, uploaded her video titled "The Blake Lively Interview That Made Me Want to Quit My Job," which has now garnered over 7 million views. That is the video on which I based my original Blake Lively video, and I think it is that video that did the most damage to Blake Lively's reputation at the time. People were already ready to hate Blake Lively. Kirsty Flaw just gave them receipts. And other online creators began revisiting evidence of Blake Lively's past bad behavior. The public effectively wrote Blake Lively off as canceled, that is, until the end of the year. On December 20th, 2024, Blake Lively filed a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department, claiming not only sexual harassment, but also smearing. She said that Justin Baldoni sexually harassed her on the set of It Ends With Us, and then hired a crisis PR team to smear her in advance in the event that she ever spoke out publicly about the sexual harassment. And everything turned around for Blake Lively overnight. There was an outpouring of support, including from other celebrities. Oh, poor thing. She was just suffering in silence the whole time. The next day, the New York Times published its now famous "We Can Bury Anyone" article detailing how Baldoni's team conspired to take down Blake Lively. The reporting for the article included primarily text messages from Baldoni's team, and everyone wondered how the New York Times had obtained private text messages without ever contacting any of their authors. Yeah, though the article was clearly planned months in advance, it dropped on a Saturday in the middle of the holiday season. And Justin Baldoni says that he was given less than 24 hours to respond, which is not journalistic standard. I would know. I have a master's degree in print journalism from the oldest journalism school in the world. The article also mentioned Kirsty Flaw, but Kirsty Flaw says she was never contacted for comment. On the same day, Justin Baldoni was dropped by his talent agency, the same firm that also reps both Blake Lively and her husband, Ryan Reynolds. He was stripped of an award he had received for his advocacy work. 2 days later, he was abandoned by his co-host for his podcast about women's rights. And on Christmas Eve 2024, Justin Baldoni was sued by his former public relations representative. More on her in a minute. And on New Year's Eve 2024, Baldoni was sued by Blake Lively. Her suit was later amended and he sued the New York Times. The New York Times lawsuit was dropped, so the paper is now suing him for attorney's fees. On January 15th, 2025, Baldoni then sued both Lively and Reynolds for defamation for $400 million. That case was dropped in June with permission to refile, which Baldoni never did. On February 1st of last year, Justin Baldoni created a website with legal documentation and supporting evidence, and Judge Lyman, the judge presiding in the case, ordered all parties involved to stop litigating the case in the court of public opinion. In other words, a gag order. Taylor Swift at some point was subpoenaed. She requested that the subpoena be rescinded. There are some other lawsuits involving a lot more people and a lot more going on, but that was a summary. I did the best I could. The trial date was originally scheduled for March 9th, the day after International Women's Day appropriately, but was rescheduled to May 18th to accommodate more important cases. Because Blake Lively's ego is so massive, she probably will not drop the lawsuit, even though she should, because she has already lost in the court of public opinion and her career is effectively over. So I think that there will be a trial, and I think that Taylor Swift will be asked to testify. And everyone is just popping their popcorn, clutching their pearls, and gearing up for another epic Depp Heard Mars Venus showdown. Before the case goes to trial, I'm here to discuss how some of the evidence that has been made publicly available exemplifies some of the points that I have been making about workplace bullying for years. In future videos, I will break down why I think things happened the way they did and what I think should be done moving forward. Alors, the first workplace bullying technique that I want to discuss is something that I call extortion. If you're new to my channel, I wrote an essay on workplace bullying about a decade ago. It's available on my website, and in my essay, the first thing that I did was break down what I think constitutes workplace bullying, because I thought before anything can be done about the problem, it has to be defined first. So I identified about 20 behaviors that I call techniques that I consider bullying. And one of them was extortion, which I mentioned only briefly in passing. At the time, it was largely tongue-in-cheek, and it was because I thought that one of my bullies had stolen money from me. I've since expanded my definition of extortion to encapsulate all the ways in which workplace bullies steal from you, because they do, and I have a video on that. We've all been stolen from. Workplace bullies steal your personal possessions like food or items of clothing from your workspace. It's like a war trophy. They're scalping. They can't take from you what they're really jealous of, which is your spiritual graces. So they will take whatever they can get their grubby little hands on. And that's why I always advise to never leave anything inside the workplace at any time. And I have a video on that too. Workplace bullies also try to steal your identity with all of their creepy copycat single white female stalking. But the number one thing that workplace bullies steal is your ideas, passing off your ideas as their own. That's intellectual property theft. And I think that's why academia is one of the top industries for workplace bullying. Professors steal their grad students' ideas all the time, and they get away with it. When I was contacting attorneys about the intellectual property theft of my creative work that I experienced at the end of 2024, see my video about the let them theory. I was told that while you can copyright words, you can't copyright ideas. However, as much as workplace bullies like to carry on about how their targets are trying to take their jobs, sometimes that is what they fully intend to do to you, for reasons that I will explain. It's just a projection, and I'll also talk more about that in a minute. What does this have to do with Blake Lively? Everything. Among many, many offenses committed here, the biggest one is extortion. According to all documentation, Blake Lively, together with her husband Ryan Reynolds, because I'm not sure that Blake Lively has the right to fart without permission from her husband, conspired even before the movie began filming to take the entire project away from Justin Baldoni, who, I repeat, was not only the producer who worked for years to secure the rights to the film, but also the director and lead actor. There's too much evidence for me to summarize here, but the manipulation of multiple parties, from studio executives to cast and crew members to other artists in the industry who never had anything to do with this project, is next level, and it reeks of desperation. Luckily, thanks to this lawsuit, it's now all part of public record. That was smart, Blake. Blake Lively was hired as an actress and an actress only. She then secured a producer credit, but it's honorary. It's decorative. She didn't produce anything. There is now a petition on change.org to strip Blake Lively of her producer credit, which I'll link to. By her own admission, she and her husband, Ryan Reynolds, rewrote the script, something that she bragged about at the premiere. She says she had to produce the movie, rewrite the entire script, and direct all of the other actors because Justin was incompetent and because someone who doesn't have a name asked her to. Here is what she wrote in a message to Matt Damon. Yes, the Hollywood actor who never had anything at all to do with this project and who lives on the other side of the country, and his wife, Luciana, who does not work in the industry at all. On May 17th, 2024, she wrote, "This movie nearly killed me. What I didn't anticipate was having to do everything in this movie. I rewrote the entire script. I directed every actor. The DP was coming to me when he couldn't get anything from him, Baldoni, so way too often." Then she said to Ben Affleck, yes, that Ben Affleck, another actor who also had nothing to do with this movie. Anyway, I ended up rewriting and restructuring the entire script. I also ended up having to direct the movie. If I would have, that was grammatically incorrect, just formally directed it, it would have been much easier. A few days after the movie premiered, but one day before the Kirsty Flaw video, Blake Lively wrote, "I reminded him, a studio executive, on the red carpet Tuesday night, that very fact. I actually said we wouldn't have this movie without me." Side note, to my knowledge, no one ever asked Blake Lively to write or direct. She edited her own version by herself and then submitted it to an arbitrary competition with Justin Baldoni's version that she repeatedly referred to as a bake-off, soliciting support from multiple industry players like Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, and of course Taylor Swift, who again had nothing to do with this movie except for, of course, Taylor Swift. And after all those months of manipulation, Justin Baldoni's version and his acting still rated more highly in pre-screenings because of course they did. But wait, it doesn't stop there. Blake Lively petitioned to have Justin Baldoni erased from the movie poster, and she even tried to have his name dropped entirely, even though again he was the director. Communication reveals that Justin Baldoni was physically shut out of the editing process. On April 23rd, 2024, Blake Lively texted to Taylor Swift, "I've finally gotten to get in the edit. Alone, no Justin." To the extent that when he showed up for the premiere of his own movie, alone because he was not allowed to appear on the red carpet together with the rest of the cast, Justin Baldoni had not even seen the film yet. Blake Lively's usurpation of Justin Baldoni's movie, a project on which he had already worked for years, was not a hijacking, it was a hostile takeover. And her reasons for doing it, I think, are pretty straightforward, which I'll talk more about later. This is nothing new. This is what she does. Listen to what Blake Lively said at the 2022 Forbes Power Women Summit. When I was younger in my life and career, I would sort of shape myself to the version of myself that I thought that they wanted. I knew that they just wanted me to show up and look cute and stand on a little pink sticker where I'm supposed to go and say what I'm supposed to say. But I also knew that that wasn't fulfilling for me, that I wanted to be a part of the storytelling, that I wanted to be a part of the narrative and the writing and the costume design and creating the character. And sometimes I had directors or producers or writers who would welcome that and invite that. And sometimes I would have people who really resented that because they were like, we just hired you to be an actor. Yet when I went in the meetings, I would just seem like I'm just there to be the actor and get the gig. I wouldn't reveal that I actually need to have authorship in order to feel fulfilled. So I think that for them, sometimes that might have felt like a rug pull because you're trying to assert yourself into something we didn't hire you to do. And so it was a really strange position to be in because I felt like I don't just want to just be an actor. By rug pull, I think Blake Lively means bait and switch. And then there's this gem, pun intended. When asked about rewriting other people's scripts, Blake Lively said, "A blank page is not nearly as exciting to me as starting with a script and finding something people have overlooked, saying, no, there's something there. To me, it's a treasure hunt. And so when I see the treasure, I get to be an archaeologist, I get to excavate, I get to carve it out and find this thing and show people the value in it. That to me is what I love." Okay, so this is basically colonizer energy, and that's something that I haven't really talked about on this channel before. I have mentioned that we have all worked with those bullies who think they own the place. They didn't found the company, they don't own the business or the property that it's standing on, they don't even have any supervisory capacity, but as far as they're concerned, they're running the whole show. They don't want to make anything, they want only to take. As I've stated about 1,000,000 times, narcissists are obsessed with winning. And as Melanie Tanya Evans tells us, the only way a narcissist can win is if someone else is losing. This is the binary I've been trying to talk about for 3 years, the seesaw, the tug of war, the one-sided competition that all of our bullies keep trying to engage us in. I'm winning because you're losing. This is side piece energy. The mistress, the side chick, is often said to pine away in hopes that her John will one day leave his wife for her, but she doesn't really want that. The side bitch or the side dick secretly enjoys that they are taking something away from someone else, albeit temporarily. If a man were to be fully available, she wouldn't want him. They could have a full plate of food sitting right in front of them and they wouldn't want it. You're going to see a fork flying past your face because they only want someone else's food. They only want what already belongs to another person. They want other people's stuff because they want to win. And the only way that they can win is by taking from someone else. I hope that makes sense. Bullies are basically franchise owners, and part of this comes from their lack of creativity. I've also said many times that bullies are not creative. A dead soul with a black heart and an ugly spirit can't create much of anything. They can only take, hurt, and destroy because they're empty and they have nothing to give. One of Blake Lively's grievances is that she is not taken seriously as a writer. More on that in a minute. Blake, revising other people's writing is not writing. That's called editing. There are 3 kinds of editing: editing, copy editing, and proofreading. I've done all 3. I have worked as a professional writer and editor. And you cannot do both at the same time because those 2 functions occupy different parts of your brain. You can't write and edit at the same time. If you want to write, you have a computer, you turn it on, you sit down, and you start writing. That's the writing process. That's pretty much all there is to it, but she doesn't want to. That's not as exciting as bastardizing what already belongs to someone else. The response I read you was in response to the question about whether or not she would ever consider writing anything from scratch. And she straight up said no. That's not interesting to her because it doesn't belong to someone else. And she can't win anything unless she's taking it away from someone else. When workplace bullies cannot take something away from you, they will try to destroy it. And that includes not only your work, but also your entire life. That's called sabotage, and I have a video on that. I mentioned that Justin Baldoni was dropped by the agency that represented him, WME, after the article in the New York Times appeared. I also mentioned that WME is the same agency that still represents Blake Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds, who documentation now shows sure was eager to speak with WME executives in August of 2024 when the backlash began. It's pretty obvious, allegedly for entertainment purposes only, that Ryan Reynolds was instrumental in coercing WME into dropping Justin Baldoni, maybe even with overt threats, like possibly leaving the agency, which means that for now, Justin can't work. So he can't make money to support his family. He has a wife and 2 kids. So co-opting his entire creative project was not enough. They had to ruin his entire life too. Snubbing is a workplace bullying technique that encapsulates not only the narcissistic silent treatment, stonewalling, the cold shoulder, but also all of the ostracism, isolation, and exclusion that goes down in the workplace. Snubbing is not avoidance. An avoidant person is traumatized and trying to protect themselves. Their nervous system has been shot to hell and they have no pain threshold. Avoidant people are just trying to protect themselves. Snubbers are trying to hurt people. Snubbing is something that I call willful ignoring. The workplace bully really, really, really needs you to know that you are being ignored. You are being excluded. Although it doesn't look like it, like all bullying, snubbing is attention-seeking behavior. Snubbers want you to feel bad. So, like all bullying, it is not only a need for attention, but also intent to inflict psychological harm. It's what we saw in the original Kirsty Flaw video, and I mentioned that in my Blake Lively video. Blake Lively snubs Kirsty Flaw by physically turning away from her and shutting her out of the conversation. And when she does finally manage to make Kirsty Flaw feel bad, which we can see from Kirsty Flaw's facial expression, that makes Blake Lively feel good, which we can see from her facial expression. She's smiling. She considers another person's pain a win. When I saw that, I immediately thought 2 things. Number 1, she's done this before. This is probably just what she does, and that's what you should think too if you're being bullied. As I've stated many times, all workplace bullies are serial repeat offenders. A lot of them have a track record and a pretty high body count. You are not the first person they've done this to, and you probably won't be the last. Kirsty Flaw definitely wasn't the first or the last. And all workplace bullies have a default go-to MO, and it's based on their own trauma. They really expose themselves. All workplace bullies are trying to project their own worst insecurities about themselves onto you to force you to process them for them because they have no capacity to self-regulate. So when you are being bullied, if you can just detach and take a step back, you can ask yourself 2 things. How many other people has this person done this to? And what specific feeling is this person trying to project onto me? Because that's how they feel all the time. I mentioned that Blake Lively shut Justin Baldoni out of the editing of his own film. And around the time of the film's premiere, she orchestrated the great unfollowing. She convinced almost the entire cast to unfollow Justin Baldoni's social media, which rivals only Taylor Swift in its pettiness. There's a reason she did that. I will explain. I mentioned that Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni did not appear on the red carpet for the premiere of the movie. Justin Baldoni said that Blake Lively initially tried to get him banned altogether from attending the premiere of his own movie, and that it took a lot of work on his part to get permission to attend the premiere of his own movie. But wait, there's more. After Justin Baldoni appeared on the red carpet at the premiere, in order to see his own movie, because he had not been allowed to see it before that moment, he was relegated to the basement of the building and forced to watch it there. Then Blake Lively asked him to leave early and banned him from his own after party. Now, Justin Baldoni's written communication about how deeply hurtful her actions toward him were is available. I won't read it to you here, but it is heartbreaking. When I made my Blake Lively video about a year and a half ago, I knew that this is what she does, and I also knew that she was exposing her own worst fears and insecurities. If this is what she does, if she snubs people, what that tells me is that her greatest fear in life is not being included. It's very, very important to her to feel included, to be one of the cool kids, to be part of the in crowd, an A-lister, and I will explain why when I get to her astrology. And I said that Blake's behavior told me that at one time in her life, she did not feel included. And then I found this piece of trivia on her IMDb. Went to 13 different schools before she graduated from high school. I think that pretty much says it all. Ridicule, mockery, and making fun in the workplace are when workplace bullies literally laugh at you. They also make jokes at your expense that are not funny, but just mean. Now, I'm going to blur the lines here between ridicule and gossip, another workplace bullying technique, because I think I have overlooked just how much ridicule goes on behind your back. When I was in 5th grade, there was an I Hate Claire club on the playground. If you're being bullied in the workplace, your bullies probably have an I Hate You club, and it's probably electronic. Workplace bullies abuse company resources like equipment and time for the purposes of trash talking the target. They organize whole email chains and even groups on their personal social media. These days, the technology of choice appears to be a group chat, and that's exactly what's going on here. When workplace bullies are gossiping about you, you know it, and you usually know what the content of that gossip is because it comes up in conversation. However, maybe you don't realize just how mean-spirited the ridicule gets behind your back. The all-consuming mean-spiritedness of both Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds when they are ridiculing Justin Baldoni is some of the worst I have ever heard in my life, and I've been doing this for over 30 years. There are too many examples for me to list here. For every example I give you, there are probably at least a dozen more. Luckily, they put it all in writing, so now it's all part of public record thanks to the lawsuit that Blake Lively filed. A selection. Even before the movie began filming, Blake Lively was already trash-talking her director to her then-friend Taylor Swift, calling him a, quote, doofus. At the time, Blake Lively was a 35-year-old adult woman with 4 children of her own. Personally, I haven't heard the word doofus used since I was in primary school, and I'm in my 50s. In addition to doofus, Blake Lively refers to Justin Baldoni as a creep, a goof, a donkey, and a bag of hot gas. I think she means gas bag. But her all-time favorite slur for Justin Baldoni by far appears to be clown. She calls him a clown so many times that I finally just stopped counting. In a text exchange with Taylor Swift on April 12th, 2023, before the movie began filming, Blake Lively sent Taylor a GIF of the Aladdin character from Disney to mock Justin Baldoni. Aladdin is supposed to be of Arab descent. Justin Baldoni is Italian Catholic on his father's side and Ashkenazi Jewish on his mother's side. In a May 17th, 2024 group chat with Matt and Luciana Damon, Ryan Reynolds calls Justin Baldoni a malignantly vain. He misspelled the word vein, like artery. Sociopathic, feminist, faux in all caps, with almost no sense of boundaries or shame. I cannot believe he hasn't gone to jail or returned to the sun. That's not all that Ryan did. Justin's litigation referenced the Nice Pool character that Ryan Reynolds plays in a Deadpool and Wolverine movie. Nice Pool says that he identifies as a feminist and has a podcast. He has a man bun, as Justin Baldoni has had in the past, and Ryan Reynolds went so far as to make fun of Justin Baldoni in his own film. The rewrites of the now famous rooftop scene that Blake Lively bragged that her husband wrote are so obscenely vulgar that I don't feel like repeating them here. And in the end credits for the movie, Blake Lively extends her thanks to people who supported her, including Gordon Reynolds, a pseudonym that Ryan Reynolds has used in the past for an alter ego, and the name that he used for Nice Pool. Nice. Now, Ryan Reynolds is Canadian and he's about my age. I want to think that he borrowed the name Gordon from the debut album by Bare Naked Ladies. Hello 90s reference, Gen X. God, I feel old. That's my conspiracy theory anyway. But the biggest slur that Blake Lively hurls at Justin Baldoni is her repeated references to what she calls his cult. She uses the word cult in messages to Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Taylor Swift, and basically half of Hollywood so many times that, again, I lost count. Again, Justin Baldoni is Italian Catholic on his father's side and Ashkenazi Jewish on his mother's side, which means he's halakhic. However, he was raised in the Baha'i faith, which he continues to practice to this day. In case you didn't know, the Baha'i religion is a legitimate religion that is not considered a cult in any country in the world, not even in Germany, where they take cults very seriously, as Justin Baldoni's ancestors would understand. The Baha'i religion originated in Persia around 200 years ago. More than ridicule, I think what we see here is Blake Lively's ignorance, not to mention her narcissistic ego. I'm not saying that Blake Lively is stupid. I said as much in previous videos. If we define stupidity as a below average IQ, workplace bullies are not necessarily stupid per se. Blake Lively has Mercury in Virgo in the first house. Mercury is exalted in Virgo and it's in its joy in the first house. Travis Kelce has the same placement. But she's not university educated, and I would bet money that before she met Justin Baldoni, she had probably never even heard of Baha'i. I heard about Baha'i when I was in high school. I've been to the Baha'i temple in my hometown. And even though I've worked with people from about 80 countries, to my knowledge, I've never worked with anyone Baha'i. So if I did, I would be full of questions. How do you practice? What are your holidays? Do you have a place of worship? Do you have a religious leader? Do you have a weekly holy day? What is your prayer regimen? Do you have any dietary restrictions? I love that stuff. I love learning. In fact, that's the only reason I bother interacting with other people at this point. I just like to exchange knowledge and ideas, and spirituality is my favorite. But as I stated in my video, you are learning discernment. People who are narcissistic in nature can't lean in. And that's because they're obsessed with dominating. Insecure people have a pathological need to dominate, and if they can't dominate it, then it can't exist. So they're very dismissive. Oh, Baha'i? Oh, I've never heard of that. So it's stupid. Curiosity is a very pro-social trait. And I'm not talking about all the creepy, obsessive stalking and harassment that we've all endured in the workplace, whereby workplace bullies violate your boundaries and assault you with the 20 rapid-fire series of invasive, intrusive personal questions because they're jealous, they low-key want to be you, and they want to validate their insecurities with yours. I'm talking about curiosity that is healthy because it's not possessive. It originates not from jealousy, but from a joy of learning. But insecure people have no humility, so they can't be in a learner's position because it makes them feel vulnerable. And I think that's why Blake Lively is so viciously disparaging of Justin Baldoni's religion right from the jump. It makes her feel vulnerable and insecure because she doesn't know anything about that, so she can't dominate it. She's also jealous. When I was reading the full horror of what these people did to Justin Baldoni, I kept wondering how on earth this man is still standing. I thought I had it bad. I thought you had it bad. No offense, but our experiences really pale in comparison to what this man has been through over the past 3 years. And I kept thinking, this man must have one hell of a spiritual practice. It's probably one of the few things, in addition to his friends and family, that have gotten him through this. It definitely made him strong in the face of her attacks. And I think that's another reason that she hates it so much. I also told you there's not a lot of variety to a narcissist's emotional landscape. When it comes to emotional range, narcissists are pretty much a two-note wonder. They can do pathological jealousy and rage. When you read the things that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds wrote about Justin Baldoni, the rage is so intense, it's practically radiating off the page. And it's definitely giving jealousy. What it's also giving is the 2014 Sony Pictures hack, which is ironic given that It Ends With Us was distributed by Sony. I know I'm dating myself with this reference. In case you missed it, some North Korean hackers leaked confidential information to retaliate against Sony for negatively portraying Kim Jong-un in a movie. Part of the tea was an exchange between an executive and a producer ridiculing Angelina Jolie. At the time, Angelina Jolie was vying for a role as Cleopatra. She said that was the one role she always really wanted. And I'm sure that Brad is the one who made sure that Angelina never got it and Gal Gadot got it instead, allegedly for entertainment purposes only. Anyway, Angelina is very earnest. She's sincere and professional. In other words, she's a true believer. And that is one of the reasons that you get bullied in the workplace. More on that in a minute. And the Sony people just come off as a couple of bitchy, catty, trashy, ugly little pick-me mean girls in the junior high cafeteria who are hell-bent on systematically lowering the vibration of the entire environment down to their level. And that's pretty much what Blake and Ryan sound like too. I also find it ironic that although the Baha'i faith is definitely not a cult, you know what is a cult? The Swifties. The Swifties are probably the biggest cult in the world after MAGA. What is rule number 1 of cult membership? Thou shalt not question thy fearless leader. When Taylor Swift was with Joe Alwyn for almost 7 years, the Swifties worshipped him like he was an angel who saved her life. Now, even 3 years after their breakup, they still cyberbully him. They call him jobless. The Swifties are so horrible, they even cyberbully his co-stars. And now they worship Travis as the new god in Taylor's universe. They swallow wholesale whatever she spoon feeds them. The fact that the Swifties are the only real cult in all of this is ironic, given that that is what Blake projects onto Justin, which is just part and parcel of her stunning hypocrisy, which I'll also talk more about in a minute. A lot of workplace bullying arises out of poor boundary function. All abusers try to erode your boundaries to make you more vulnerable to their abuse. They pick and poke and prod and pry, and they do not take no for an answer. That's why I can't stress enough the importance of boundaries on this channel. You really have to know what your boundaries are and get them locked down and watertight before you even set foot inside the workplace. You can't always control your bullies' boundary violations, but there are steps that you can take to mitigate them. Like, for example, never ever permitting anyone you work with inside your home or your vehicle. After you have all left the workplace, if you want to keep in touch with past coworkers, y'all can all hang out at each other's homes. But as long as you are still working together, that is an absolute no-go. That is a hard and fast rule because they will try. Workplace bullies drive past your place of residence and even invite themselves inside. Similarly, you should never go to your coworkers' homes. I have been invited several times to my coworkers' homes, and that was obviously just because they wanted to have sex with me. Say it with me. Bullies get away with more behind closed doors. If anyone you work with is inviting you inside a confined space, whether it's an elevator, a closet, or their own home, that's only because they want to escalate the abuse out of earshot of the people they're trying to impress. And when they're on their home turf, everything is fair game. We've all heard horror stories from the entertainment industry about young women and men who were invited inside producers' homes, and we all know what happened to them there. That's why I find it ironic and, again, hypocritical that Blake Lively fashions herself as an advocate for women. More on that in a minute. As much as she cares about the double standard in her industry, apparently she doesn't think that it applies to Justin Baldoni. I mentioned that she was already bullying him by talking shit about him behind his back, even before they began filming, when she had already invited him inside her home. At least twice, to my knowledge, Justin Baldoni was inside Blake Lively's New York residence, where he was ambushed by both Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift and raged at by Ryan. That is the workplace bullying technique of yelling, which I'm including here. Yelling, although it's usually the first thing that people who don't know anything about workplace bullying think of when they think of workplace bullying, is actually very rare. Workplace bullies raise their voices, but yelling? Most workplace bullies aren't stupid enough to pull off overt offenses like that, at least not in public, but in private, behind closed doors, nothing is below the belt. That's why I absolutely believe that Ryan Reynolds screamed right in Justin Baldoni's face, because at the time, Ryan was inside his own home and he could get away with it. I also find it ironic that Blake Lively is a producer on this film, albeit an honorary one. Can you imagine if Justin Baldoni had been a young woman, an actress, invited inside a producer's home? But I guess Blake's advocacy applies only when it affects her. Justin Baldoni was also inside Blake's vehicle, and her driver has now been deposed in the case. Which begs the question, what was Justin Baldoni doing inside Blake Lively's car in the first place? He can call an Uber. Now, The most horrific boundary violation occurred not to Justin Baldoni, but to his publicist. And I want to issue a trigger warning here because this is one of the most horrifying things I have ever heard in all of my years of doing this. Let me preface this by saying that all of this is alleged. In case you didn't know, Justin Baldoni contracted with a public relations firm for the production and rollout of his movie. The firm was owned by a woman named Stephanie Jones, and his contact there was a woman named Jennifer Abel. Stephanie Jones and Jennifer Abel had a falling out, so Jennifer Abel said that she was going to leave the firm and start her own. Mistake number one, yes, by all means, have dreams, goals, ambitions outside of your job. Get your side hustle on, but do not ever tell anyone you work with, above all your boss, about what your outside activities or interests are. Anyway, Justin Baldoni said, if Jennifer Abel leaves, I'm going with her. So now Stephanie Jones has an axe to grind with both Jennifer Abel and Justin Baldoni. So when Jennifer Abel returned to the firm to collect her things, mistake number two. After you have been eliminated from the workplace, either by choice or by force, do not ever go back there. I don't care if you left your grandmother's wedding ring inside the workplace, do not return. Don't even drive in the area. Anyway, when she returned, she was met with 3 men: a security guard, a data extraction specialist, and an attorney. The workplace bullying ambush. What did I tell you? It's never one-on-one. Workplace bullies always gang bang. One big burly security guard was not enough to intimidate a 115-pound woman. They had to sic the lawyer on her too. And they confiscated her personal cell phone, not her work phone. Her personal cell phone that she had since she was 15 years old because she had used it for work purposes. Mistake number 3. What did I tell you? What did Dr. Claire say? Never use any personal devices for any work-related activity. Jennifer Abel agreed to hand over her phone only on the condition that Stephanie Jones release her number so that Jennifer Abel could connect it to a new device, because obviously she needed that number for 2-factor authorization for sensitive accounts. And Stephanie Jones agreed, but she never released the number. Future faking. And Stephanie Jones, because she subscribes to the Taylor Swift gospel, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, then tried to get in touch with Blake Lively, presumably through Blake Lively's publicist Leslie Sloan. In her recent deposition, Blake Lively said that she was put in touch with Stephanie Jones via Ashley Avignon. Does that name ring a bell? If not, you're not a Swiftie. Ashley Avignon is Taylor Swift's stylist and her longtime friend of almost 20 years. And Ashley Avignon is also represented by WME, the agency that represents Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds and that dropped Justin Baldoni. Ashley Avignon, after Taylor Swift began dating Travis Kelce, attended football games with her at least once, also with Blake Lively. And Taylor's professional publicist, Tree Payne, would have us believe that Taylor had nothing to do with this movie. Oh, what a tangled web we weave. Anyway, when Stephanie Jones got in touch with Blake Lively, presumably she said, I have something I think might be of interest to you. And Jennifer Abel's personal cell phone ended up in Blake Lively's hands. I would imagine there was also an exchange of money, allegedly for entertainment purposes only. Stephanie Jones is not the kind of person to give away something that valuable for free. And Blake Lively applied confirmation bias to select words and phrases from the text messages that supported her narrative. She then handed them over to the New York Times, which used that information in its hit piece on Justin Baldoni that ruined his life, which I remind you was released on a weekend in the middle of the holidays after Justin Baldoni was given less than 24 hours to respond. On Jennifer Abel's cell phone were text exchanges with her friends and family members, including her husband, access to all of her social media accounts, and access to not only her financial records, but also her health information. How does that sound? Do you want your text history with your romantic partner in the hands of a millionaire insecure narcissist who is then going to hand them over to one of the largest publications in the country? You can read Jennifer Abel's accounts of how much damage this has done to her, but again, trigger warning, they are heartbreaking. Was that legal? Well, that's a good question. The plot thickens. I told you that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are both business people. They own multiple businesses jointly and separately. One of those businesses is a company called Van Zandt. Van Zandt has no activities and no employees. In other words, it's just a shell operation that Blake and Ryan operate to do a whole bunch of shady shit. In the summer of 2024, when Blake Lively's reputation was tanking, Van Zandt filed a lawsuit. Against whom, you might ask? Against 10 John and Jane Does, in other words, no one. The lawsuit claimed that the John and Jane Does were harming Van Zandt's business. Then in late September, Blake Lively issued a subpoena, because you can't have a subpoena without a lawsuit, to Stephanie Jones to take possession of the phone as a retroactive legal justification for the theft of the phone that had already been confiscated, allegedly. On December 19th, 2 days before the New York Times article was published, the sham lawsuit was dropped. I thought I had it bad. I thought you had it bad. But that is truly one of the worst things I have ever heard. Consider this a lesson in cybersecurity. Even though phone and text message histories can be subpoenaed from service providers, as they have been in this case, in the event that anything like this, God forbid, ever happens to you, make sure your phone is clean. I have no social media apps on my phone. I don't even have YouTube. I have never checked my email on my phone. I delete all call records, voicemail messages, and text messages from my phone every single day, sometimes twice a day, unless they're open. For example, if I have a prescription waiting at the pharmacy, I leave that message open until I pick it up. Then I delete it. I keep only active email messages in my accounts. I know some of you are concerned about emailing me, but don't worry. If you are not an active client of mine, it's all been deleted. I learned how to protect my clients a long time ago. I delete my browser history on all of my devices at least twice a day. I delete my Netflix history every time I finish watching anything. I delete my YouTube history once a year. I keep no photographs on my phone. I even clear my calculator, clock, and music history. And I hope that you are not stupid enough to access your financial accounts through any Wi-Fi connection that is not your own. If you are not paying for the network, do not open any of your accounts on it. I back up all of my content on all of my devices at least once a day, and I store it in 2 separate secure locations that no one will ever know about, so I never lose anything. I know all of that sounds paranoid, but if Jennifer Abel's story teaches us anything, you can never be too careful. One of the points I make about workplace bullying is that workplace bullies never act alone. I have multiple videos about that, and I said that in my last Blake Lively video. Workplace bullies always gangbang. The word mobbing just needs to be retired once and for all, because all workplace bullying is mobbing, and I have a video titled exactly that. Workplace bullies always have their nasty little minions, their pick-me codependent enablers. Often these are the queen's bloody hands, her emissaries running around doing all of her dirty work for her because she's too cowardly to do it herself. In narcissistic abuse parlance, these are called the flying monkeys. Workplace bullies enlist flying monkeys for two reasons. Number one, it's a numbers game. There's strength in numbers. Workplace bullies know that if they can corral as many people as possible on board the bullying bandwagon, then they make the lone target look like the problem. If you were a boss and you had 10 bullies on your hands and only one target, what would you think and what would you do? The second reason is guilt. Deep down, workplace bullies know that what they are doing is wrong, so they need a lot of external validation. If other people are doing it too, then it can't be that bad. As I've stated many times, goodness can stand alone, evil needs allies. And that's why workplace bullies never act alone. Workplace bullies coerce the flying monkeys into going along with the bullying through a combination of reward and punishment, kickbacks and threats, either overt or implied. Often, the flying monkeys understand the threat implicitly. If they don't go along with the bullying, they know they will be targeted next. If you're not with us, you're against us. Extensive communication between Blake Lively and her co-stars, Brandon Sklenar and Jenny Slate, reveal that she was successful in turning them against Justin Baldoni pretty early on. It is a level of manipulation that is, quite frankly, impressive. For a mother of 4, she sure had a lot of time on her hands. She was busy. As I've stated, workplace bullies often spend more time bullying than doing the actual work they are being paid to do. This too is Blake Lively's MO. When she worked on Gossip Girl with co-star Penn Badgley, now of Netflix's You fame, she said when she first met him, and this is a direct quote, "At first I was so upset that they hired him. I actually poisoned the whole cast against him." She said that she didn't believe that he really was a nice person. And I think that's part of the problem here too. I will explain. In Blake's communication with her It Ends With Us co-stars, Kirsty Flaw has pointed out how so many of those text messages appear edited to perfection, as though someone were preparing to weaponize them as evidence later on. I noticed the lack of specificity. Now, I've talked some trash about my bullies on this channel, and who can blame me? I feel as though I'm just giving a voice to how we all really feel about people who literally threaten our lives. However, most of the time when I talk about my bullies, I don't just ridicule and insult them. I talk about what they did to me, because I have receipts. For every one of my workplace bullies, I can say on this specific day, date, and time, this person did or said this or that. I let their words and behaviors speak for themselves, just the facts, ma'am. However, from what I've read so far from Blake Lively's communications with her coworkers, there's not really any information about what exactly Justin Baldoni did that was so bad in the first place. Just the vibe that they all hate him because that's what they're supposed to do. But if you read the IMDb pages of Blake Lively's co-stars who continue to support her, they sure have a lot of projects coming up. Lots of nice new work in the pipeline. Yeah, I'm sure they really support Blake. And I think that the only reason more people in Hollywood have not spoken out against Blake Lively is not that they really support her, but just that they are afraid of her husband's money. If Ryan Reynolds ever divorces her, that's going to be it. a lot more people are going to tell us how they really feel. The flying monkeys that Blake Lively enlisted in her campaign against Justin Baldoni included, like I said, half of Hollywood, starting with, of course, Ryan and Taylor, whom she sicked on Justin, the workplace bullying ambush inside her home, boundary violation, to get him to go along with her changes to the script, which brings us to the now infamous Dragons tweet. On April 14th, 2023, again, even before the movie began filming, Blake texted Justin, "If you ever get around to watching Game of Thrones, you'll appreciate that I'm Khaleesi. Sorry, I don't watch Game of Thrones. And like her, I happen to have a few dragons, for better or worse, but usually for better, because my dragons also protect those I fight for. So we really all benefit from those gorgeous monsters of mine. You will too, I can promise you." That text was after Blake referred to her husband and her best friend as her dance moms. So in this text, Blake Lively is alternately threatening and future faking Justin Baldoni at the same time. That text is basically the Nepo baby version of "my daddy's gonna come out on this here porch with his shotgun." In my last Blake Lively video, I mentioned the word mafia as a purely linguistic reference. I didn't know it was literal. I'm sorry, did Blake Lively think that she was filming The Sopranos? Because she kind of sounds like Goodfellas here. "Hey, Baldoni, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way." Later on, to push her version through and basically get her way, Blake Lively name drops just about everyone to everyone. Here is how she threatens Sony executive Josh Greenstein into letting her edit the movie by herself. On May 31st, 2024 at 4:04 a.m., she texts him, "Spoke with Colleen. Colleen Hoover is the author of the book on which the movie is based, and for some reason she was present throughout pretty much the whole process. She feels like I do. Still full steam ahead with my cut. Colleen and I are declaring now, this is the cut. We will work to improve this cut, but Colleen said tonight I would much rather have your cut exactly as is be released than his cut," Baldoni's, even with the lower numbers. She is referring to the fact that, as I said, Baldoni's version did better in pre-screenings. "I don't like his cuts. It's done from my perspective, from Colleen's, and from Taylor's." I love how Blake Lively just had to name drop Taylor Swift again in that moment. And then she contacted Ben Affleck, Matt Damon and his wife, Luciana, Bradley Cooper, and God knows who else to get their approval of her version when, again, none of those people had anything to do with this movie. You can literally hear her amassing the troops. She sounds like she's mobilizing for war. "Give me what I want, or I will send all of my rich, famous, and powerful friends after you." I want to add here that sometimes the arch bully flying monkey dynamic can be a bonding mechanism. Again, workplace bullies never act alone. In fact, they are often in pairs. It's a case of strange bedfellows, the long and the short of it. These two people who otherwise have absolutely nothing in common, who ordinarily would not give each other the time of day, and who, if left to their own devices, would probably bully each other, suddenly strike up some kind of weird symbiotic relationship because they now have a mutual target. It's like you and I hate the same person, so we have a connection. In this case, that pair would be Blake and Ryan. After a decade together and 4 kids, it sounds like their mutual hatred of Justin Baldoni really revitalized their marriage. I know they say that it takes work to keep a marriage strong, but I don't think destroying another man's life was what they meant. Narcissists do a pretty good job of telling on themselves, especially with all of their false accusations. As I've stated many times, learn to take every word out of your bullies' mouths and turn it around as a projection of how they really feel about themselves. Kirsty Flaw has pointed out how often everything that Blake Lively accuses Justin Baldoni of, she is guilty of herself. Again, there are too many examples for me to include in only one video, so this is just a selection. The first projection would be the lawsuit. Blake Lively is suing Justin Baldoni for two things: workplace sexual harassment and smearing. She says that Justin Baldoni sexually harassed her on the set of It Ends With Us. But before they were on that set, she sent him this text. On April 8th, 2023, Blake texted Justin, "I can send you my pass at the roof." She's referring to the rooftop scene that she bragged on the red carpet that her husband rewrote. "Or just read with you when we get together next week. Let me know what you prefer. If you knew me, parentheses, in person, longer, you'd have a sense of how flirty and yummy the ball busting would play. It's my love language. Spicy and playfully bold, never with teeth." Gosh, it's not even spring here yet. It's already getting warm. I'll just take a sip. My lunch was spicy. I had sausage. Now my lips are wet. When's the last time you sent a text like that to your boss? If you're having difficulty answering that question, I don't think it's hard. I don't mean to sound cocky. I've just been taking my vitamins, feeds the brain, like especially vitamin D. But the burning hot question that is pulsating and throbbing in my head is, who in the Southern District of New York has a sense of humor? I just want to extend props to the Friedman team for making that the first text in the first exhibit. And they made the Taylor Swift text 89. Kudos. That was polished. Among Blake Lively's complaints is that Justin Baldoni called her sexy when she herself has used that word repeatedly, including on the set of It Ends With Us, of which there is video evidence. I don't know about the legal definition. I don't think there is one, but linguistically, the word sexy can be used in multiple languages for something that is simply interesting. I have used it in that context. According to Le Robert, the word sexy in French can mean plaisant, attrayant, or du contexte sexuel. Like, do you want to go out tonight for Italian or Caribbean food? Let's try Caribbean, it's sexier. I don't want to fuck my food. I just mean that I've had Italian cuisine a million times and I'd like to try something new. Caribbean cuisine is sexy because it's novel to me. This lawsuit is replete with minor examples like that. Another projection on Blake's part is about Justin Baldoni's relative lack of experience. In an April 12th, 2023, again before the movie began filming, text to Taylor Swift, Blake Lively calls Justin Baldoni green. On May 17th, 2024, over a year later, when Blake Lively was still complaining to half of Hollywood about Justin Baldoni's incompetence, Luciana Damon, Matt Damon's wife, drinking the Kool-Aid, texted back, "It's insane the power this guy has had with no experience to back him." Again, Blake Lively demands to be taken seriously, not as an actress, because she actually doesn't give a shit about acting, more on that later, but as a producer, director, and writer. And since she is so superior to Justin Baldoni, because apparently she has so much more experience, let's talk about that experience. In case you missed it, Blake Lively actually is a director, or she was. Once. Would you like to know what she directed? that would be one music video for, of course, her best friend at the time, Taylor Swift, for what is categorically the worst song in Taylor's entire catalog. I Bet You Think About Me, a vault track off of her re-record of Red. Read the lyrics. They're all about a guy who dumped her, of course, and looks down on her because he has more money than she does, and she's so homespun and humble. Taylor, your dad was a stockbroker who worked for Merrill Lynch. Perhaps the biggest projection here is Blake and Ryan repeatedly accusing Justin Baldoni of sociopathy. I'm gonna let that one speak for itself. Pot kettle, Ryan. In other projections, Blake Lively is accusing Justin Baldoni of smearing and suing him for it. Again, this is not a legal definition, it's a linguistic one. I was a language major. The word smear in English connotes falsehood. In order to smear someone, whatever you say has to be by definition untrue. You cannot smear someone with the truth. For example, if I said Donald Trump is in a throuple with Barack and Michelle Obama, that would be smearing because it's patently untrue. If I said Donald Trump is a convicted felon, that would not be smearing. It's true. He is. You may not like hearing it, doesn't make it any less true. If Blake Lively does not like what has happened to her, her career, her reputation over the last year and a half, she has no one but herself to blame. It's all her. Video and textual evidence of her words, her actions. You cannot smear someone with their own behavior. It's not AI. You know what is smearing? Calling Justin Baldoni's legitimate faith a cult to half of Hollywood. That's also religious discrimination, and it's a violation of the Civil Rights Act. From her history, Blake Lively appears to have one major chip on her shoulder, and that is about not being respected and taken seriously. Her former friend, Taylor Swift, has 3 major chips on her shoulder, which I referenced in my video about Taylor that no one watched. The first one is about sexism, misogyny, and the double standard. Anytime anything goes wrong in Taylor Swift's life, it's just always about her gender, not anything else. The second one is her edgy, sexy, cool thing, which Blake Lively echoed verbatim because by her own admission, she's obsessed with Taylor. Taylor seems to really resent that people expect her to be edgy, sexy, and cool when those people don't actually exist. And Taylor's third grievance is about desire. She feels shamed for having desire, for wanting things, and for being open, vulnerable, and expressive about her desire. She looks down on people who are too cool for school and accuses them of hiding their desire because she doesn't have enough empathy to understand where they're coming from. Now, the latter two of Taylor's pet peeves are coming from the men she dated. For a decade, she dated not 1, not 2, but 5 UK artists who are presumably better educated than their American counterparts. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the impression that the expression of desire, like for money or fame or power, is generally frowned upon in English culture. You're not supposed to want anything, and if you do, you're not supposed to express that openly. Taylor seems to feel like the men she dated dimmed her light and generally thought that she was less than because of her enthusiasm. And because Taylor has no idea who she is, she lives in a world of comparisons. And so she studied the kind of women that the men she dated are used to see how she measures up. And she came to the conclusion that she's just not as edgy or sexy or cool as the other girls at the party. In other words, she doesn't know how to act indifferent, so she assumes that other people are faking their indifference, and I'll talk more about that later. But Blake's grievance is all about respect. Again, she really wants to be taken seriously as a producer, director, and above all, writer. In interviews, she has referred to this nebulous concept of respect, and that really rang a bell for me, because I've heard that before, and I think you have too. I have been accused of being rude and disrespectful by my workplace bullies, some of whom were also weirdly preoccupied with the respect thing, when I'm pretty sure I was never anything of the kind, and I know you weren't either. I'm pretty sure I was polite and professional. I show up on time, I make eye contact, I shake hands, I greet everyone. Hi, hello, how are you? Have a nice weekend. Did you have a nice weekend? I perform my work as outlined in my job description to the best of my ability, collect my paycheck, and go home. I've also been saying for years that often workplace bullies bully you because they are not getting what they want from you, which they never articulate, because they have no verbal skills, because they have no empathy, and because they're full of shit. Different bullies want different things, but sometimes what they want is for you to see them exactly the way they expect to be seen. They want you to swallow their narcissistic ego, hook, line, and sinker. It's kind of like once more with feeling, which is appropriate in this case. As I've also stated, narcissists are not okay being okay. It's not enough to be polite and professional. You are supposed to be so blown away by their sheer and utter awesomeness that you cannot believe that you have the good fortune just to breathe the same air as they do. You are supposed to be honored to be in their presence alone. If you have the audacity, the nerve, the unmitigated gall to approach them in a spirit of equality, they are just seething with narcissistic rage. They walk around carrying a lot of how dare you energy. How dare you even presume to be my equal? Don't you know who I am? This is a real problem for some of us in the workplace for two reasons. Number one, if you've been around the block a few times, maybe you've traveled or you've just met and worked with a lot of different people, you're not easily impressed by anyone. Everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time. And number two, I don't like it when people blow smoke up my ass, because I can always see right through it for the narcissistic manipulation that it really is. When people love bomb me, it's just kind of like, okay, what do you want from me? What are you trying to accomplish? The word flattery in English has no good connotation. It's manipulative and it's contractual. It's giving to get. So I treat people the way I want to be treated, with equality. You're a human being just like all of the hundreds of other human beings that I've interacted with in my life. But that's a real problem for some people. They do not want to be human. They are not okay being okay. Don't you know who I am? And I think that's part of the problem here too. I'll talk more about this in my next video. But Justin Baldoni is smart. He's an Aquarian. And when he first met Blake Lively, he clocked this bitch. He was not impressed. He was singing Shania. That don't impress me much. Justin Baldoni is a real intellect. He's a real artist. And he's a man of faith. He already has a God. I've also said that sometimes workplace bullies may not necessarily demand that you have sex with them, but they need confirmation that you are willing to have sex with them, despite the fact that they're already married, to validate their narcissistic superiority complex, that they are always the hottest guy or girl in any room, and everyone always wants to have sex with them. In her complaint, Blake Lively claims that Justin Baldoni once said to her, quote, "I'm not even attracted to you." That claim has been neither confirmed nor denied. Even if he never said that, he didn't have to. That is what she understood. Blake Lively was not the most amazing or the hottest woman Justin Baldoni had ever met in his life because he had already met her. He's been married for over a decade to the love of his life, and they have 2 kids together. Blake Lively has nothing that would ever interest Justin Baldoni. When I say that that man don't give a shit about the Met Gala or fashion, they don't have the same values. And I'll talk more about that in a future video. That doesn't mean that he was ever rude, disrespectful, or unprofessional. In fact, documentation shows that he spent months bending over backwards to appease her ego and insecurity. Nothing was ever good enough because at the end of the day, he just wasn't buying what she was selling. Once more with feeling, Blake Lively's smearing of Justin Baldoni from the very beginning sounds mean as hell, and it sounds angry. She sounds full of narcissistic rage. And I think part of the reason is that Justin Baldoni never put her on a pedestal. He saw her for who she really is, not who she thinks she is. Blake Lively is not inexperienced or untalented. She's been in the industry for 20 years. But I feel like she really believes that everyone should think that she is amazing and worship the ground that she walks on because she goes to the Met Gala and she has a bunch of rich, famous, and powerful Hollywood friends. Her friend Taylor is the opposite. One of the reasons that she loved Joe Alwyn so much was that he wasn't impressed by her. When he first met her at Gigi Hadid's birthday party, he was like, "Who are you?" "Oh, okay, well, I don't listen to your music." He's English and he's avoidant. She was probably so tired of all the contractual ass kissing she had been subjected to in the industry at that point that his detachment was a refreshing change. He gave her something to chase and something to earn, because at the time she probably had low self-esteem and believed that she had to work to earn everything good in life, even love. In other words, Joe Alwyn was a challenge. Blake Lively probably does not appreciate indifference or a challenge. She's probably one of those workplace bullies who fully expect you to just drop to your knees in awe at her sheer and utter amazingness the moment that you meet her. Speaking of Taylor, after Blake Lively manipulated her friend into ambushing Justin Baldoni at her home in order to threaten him into accepting her version of the script on April 12th, 2023, again, before the movie even began filming, here is what Blake texted Taylor. The most bonkers part to me is him saying to you, Taylor Swift, "He doesn't know pop culture, made me more mad than anything he's done to me." This was before they even began filming. His entire brand is disassembling toxic masculinity. He does TED Talks, ! But says that to you. Not only is it so rude, but it's untrue. The thing that enraged me is you are in an absolute league of your own in being the most popular artist alive and one of all time, but also the most respected and awarded. Okay, I can't with the grammar. There were so many errors in that word salad. It's almost unintelligible, but it goes on and on like that for some time. So here we hear, not only by her own admission, rage, but also rude, again with the rude and disrespectful thing. Now, I can't tell if Blake Lively actually believes any of this shit or if she's just kissing her friend's ass. If she does, I seriously doubt that Justin Baldoni ever did or said anything even remotely rude or disrespectful to Taylor Swift. I'm sure he did not appreciate being ambushed and threatened, but I'm also sure he kept his cool during the short time that he interacted with Taylor. Not being familiar with someone's music is not rude. No one has to listen to Taylor Swift's music or even know who she is. People do have to know who their elected officials are in a representative democracy. That would be important. Pop culture isn't. I doubt even Taylor Swift herself gives a shit about whether or not you listen to her music. She didn't think it was rude, but Blake Lively did, and I think that's what she means when she says that she feels, quote, disrespected. Don't you know who I am? For someone who appears to be as concerned with respect as Blake Lively is, she seems to have a funny understanding of what that word means. Like I said, Blake Lively was already trash talking Justin Baldoni before they even began filming together. She called him pretty much every name in the book, but her favorite insult for him by far appears to be clown. Blake Lively called Justin Baldoni a clown so many times that, again, I lost count. Clown, clown, clown. Now, I've used some choice words and phrases for my bullies on this channel. Most of that was tongue-in-cheek, but I don't think I've ever called anyone a clown. Blake Lively referred to Justin Baldoni as a clown so many times that I finally had to just look it up because, as we all know, AI knows everything and never makes mistakes. And the word clown is used to describe someone that people don't respect and don't take seriously. And that's what Blake Lively was calling her boss before she began working with him. I'm not really into the whole respect thing, but if there's one thing that I've learned about respect, it's this. It's a two-way street. Blake, if you feel as though other people don't respect you, maybe that's because you don't respect them. Just a thought. One of the reasons that you get bullied in the workplace is that you are a member of a protected class. I have a video on that, and I wrote that in my essay over a decade ago. And although I tried to say this in my essay, I think I skirted around the subject because I didn't want to really come out and say it. Sometimes workplace bullies themselves are members of protected classes. And though I vehemently despise language like weaponizing anything or playing any card, because I think those terms are used to gaslight real victims of real abuse, sometimes workplace bullies do use their protected classes against their targets. It is a form of DARVO. If you confront them on their behavior, they will accuse you of prejudice. You don't have a problem with their protected class, you just don't like being bullied. Part of the early allegations against Justin Baldoni included that his crisis PR team was considering planting stories accusing Blake Lively of, quote, weaponizing feminism in much the same way that her former friend Taylor Swift is accused of doing. Blake Lively has in the past positioned herself as somewhat of an advocate for women, the Power Women Summit, and has referenced the Me Too movement in her public statements about the case. Now, sexual harassment in the workplace is not gender specific. Plenty of men get sexually harassed by women and by other men. So it's not a gender specific issue. However, I will say this, if indeed Blake Lively is a victim of some sort of prejudice because of her protected class, which is sex, that is yet another example of more stunning hypocrisy on her part. Blake Lively is a white woman who says she is from the South. She got married on a plantation. Her husband has apologized profusely for that. She once joked about wearing blackface. In her complaint, she accused a black man of making eye contact with her. In video footage, she jokingly suggested that a man of Jewish descent get a nose job, and she very widely smeared a legitimate religion as a, quote, cult, all of which are civil rights violations, but I guess human rights apply only when they affect her. Another reason that you get bullied in the workplace is that your bullies have inappropriately overshared intimate personal information with you, and then have second thoughts about it because they feel vulnerable. So they come back guns blazing to bully you into silence. They're afraid you're going to tell someone. I call that buyer's remorse. I want to insert here that in her complaint, Blake Lively said that at some point during filming, she compiled a list of points, the number of which is not entirely clear to me. At one point there were 17, at another there were 30, and at another point there were 26. I don't know, I'm confused. Anyway, the document listed behaviors that she considered inappropriate and that she wanted Justin Baldoni and others to stop, or she would leave the film, essentially. In her list of points, Blake included no more mention by Justin Baldoni of him, quote, speaking to Blake Lively's dead father. Now, Blake Lively's father passed away some years ago, and I'm so sorry to hear that. That's horrible. Blake Lively said that Justin Baldoni claimed to be a psychic medium who had the power to communicate with the spirits of the departed. In his deposition, Justin Baldoni clarified that she told him that her father had passed away, so he went home and included her father in his prayers, and he asked her father to bless the film. Then he relayed that he had done that to Blake. To my knowledge, at no point did Justin Baldoni say he had received any communication from her father, which is what psychic mediums do. People of various faiths pray to the spirits of the deceased all the time. I imagine that's part of Justin Baldoni's spiritual practice, but I don't know that much about Baha'i. If he's telling the truth, then that is a perfect example of the kind of buyer's remorse that I'm talking about. She's the one who brought it up. She voluntarily disclosed personal information to him, but when he tried to follow up, she shut him down, so he can't win. I've been astonished by my workplace bullies' lack of verbal skills for some time now, before I learned that word salad is actually a narcissistic trait. Who knew? I may be projecting here because I'm clearly biased. I studied foreign languages and journalism, but I really believe that verbal skills are directly correlated to empathy. When we speak and when we write, we want to be clear and concise so we don't confuse people or waste their time. If I have to complete my coworkers' sentences for them and furnish their vocabulary words, that's a red flag for me, and it should be for you too. You might have a potential bully on your hands. Allow me to remind you here that Blake Lively has publicly said that she resents not being taken seriously as a writer. In a text message to, who else? Taylor Swift, Blake Lively referred to Justin Baldoni as a clown, of course, quote, who thinks he is a writer now. In addition to the unnamed number of points list, Blake Lively's husband, Ryan Reynolds, drafted an apology letter, a letter of contrition, that they demanded Justin Baldoni and others sign. I'll read you the full text here. It ends with us, all caps, was a troubled production which we take full accountability for. We are very sorry to everyone we caused upset to, privately and publicly. Blake Lively, Colleen Hoover, the entire cast and crew, no and. led with professionalism every step of the way. Any negativity aimed at them is ours to own. Okay, that was a run-on. That was a comma splice specifically. We mutually agreed that the cast would be promoting. That was an unnecessary use of the progressive aspect. The films separately and understood why. We have always said we are not perfect, and even if unintentionally make mistakes, we will always own them. We hold ourselves accountable. It's not anyone's job but ours, and that's part of being man enough. Okay, that was a run-on, and it needed another comma and incorrect punctuation at the end. We will practice what we preach. We are learning and growing from the experience, and no comma. We thank everyone for their patience as we find a better way to proceed. We are very proud of the film and the welcome arms that it's been received. I think that phrase speaks for itself. Part of our work is to have uncomfortable conversations for public growth. The film is doing that on screen, and no comma, we are doing that off screen. Thank you to the cast, crew, and public, no commas, for the opportunity to be imperfect and to be given the space to learn and grow. So learn and grow is repeated here with humanity and dedication. Okay, that was pretty much a tsunami of semantic errors, not to mention bad style. Ryan, do they have writing classes in Canada? And here's Blake Lively in a message to Jenny Slate, a supporting actress in the film, and clearly one of Blake's flying monkeys who still supports her, publicly at least. This is a truncated selection because too long didn't read. You are so stunning in this movie. I can't wait for the other, more societally discussed version of, quote, success to further roar around you like a gust of wind coming across your fire. You are the sparkling cake topper on that wedding cake. Your friendship has been such a beacon of goodness and light in all this. You, all caps, are the positivity that you so generously gave me credit for. Gosh, Blake, I can't understand why people don't take you seriously as a writer. Another reason you get bullied in the workplace is that you don't emotionally labor effectively or at all, and I have a video on that. Emotional labor in this situation applies and it doesn't. Let me explain. Emotional labor in the workplace is kind of like narcissistic fluffing, sucking up to people, buttering them up. And that applies in this case all across the board. Read through the text messages, email messages, voicemail transcriptions. The love bombing is next level. I have never heard ass kissing like this in my life. And they all do it, all parties involved. I mentioned that when I worked in education, I once had a boss who told me that when she spoke to parents, she gave a slap before a kiss. She would tell the parents something bad about their children before she told them something good. In this case, it sounds like the opposite, a kiss before a slap. Every single one of these people opens with flattery, excessive compliments before getting to what they want, which led me to surmise that maybe that's just de rigueur in the entertainment industry. Both Taylor and Blake suck up to each other. They all do it. And Justin Baldoni is no exception. In almost all of his communications with Blake, he is, especially electronically, he is excessively conciliatory. Before they began filming, Justin Baldoni texted Blake Lively, "I want you to know you will look amazing. Anything you are insecure about, we will talk through and get creative together and make you comfortable. I just don't want you to stress about your body. It's the last thing you need." Blake Lively gave birth to her fourth child shortly before filming began. And she was very upfront about her insecurity, about her body at the time. On the same day, Blake texted, "Justin is being very kind and supportive." Justin Baldoni is not just kind, he's also apologetic. He apologizes profusely to Blake, even for things that he did not do. Sound familiar? Like, for example, when Blake Lively complains about not being taken seriously in the past. That grievance again. Here's Justin Baldoni apologizing to Blake Lively in a voice memo leaked last year. "I'm really sorry I fucked up. That is a fail on my part. One thing you should know about me is I will admit and apologize when I fail. I am far from perfect. I'm a very flawed man, as my wife will attest, and I'm going to fuck up. I'm going to say the wrong thing. I'm going to put my foot in my mouth. I'm going to piss you off probably, but I will always apologize and find my way back to center. That is one thing I can assure you of. I'm sorry I made you feel that way." Justin bent over backward to make Blake feel good. That is emotional labor. You can literally hear him tiptoeing on eggshells around an ego so massive it can't fit inside Yankee Stadium. He sounds as though he's trying to negotiate a hostage situation. Every time Justin Baldoni interacts with Blake, he sounds as though he's trying to stick a pacifier in a baby. "Oh, the baby is crying today. What does she need? Does she need a diaper change? Does she need the bottle? Can we get her one of those mobiles with sparkly seahorses and dolphins and shit?" Again, this might be cultural. I got the feeling that perhaps Justin Baldoni is just used to coddling insecure narcissists because of the industry that he works in. Are they all that insecure? But no matter what Justin Baldoni did, nothing was ever good enough. Appeasement does not work with bullies. Even when he tries to compliment her, she corrects him for not complimenting her the right way. In behind-the-scenes footage he released last year, Blake Lively mentions Ryan Reynolds, because of course she does. I'm not sure she's capable of formulating a complete sentence without mentioning her husband and Taylor Swift. And Justin Baldoni responds, "You guys are cute." It's a throwaway compliment. It's like if you met a friend for lunch and you said, "You look nice." But Blake Lively corrects him. She retorts, "I think it's more than cute. I think it's amazing." What did I tell you? Narcissists are not okay being okay. They have to be amazing. Here's Blake texting Justin Baldoni after he responded to her revisions to the script. "I told them, Ryan and Taylor, again, that you laughed a bunch and said it's probably a blend. I assume she means contributions of different writers, but you appreciate my passion so much." Which of course didn't feel great for me or them to have my passion praised instead of any specific contribution. So he complimented her passion, but that wasn't good enough for her because that wasn't exactly what she wanted. So the next day, he texted her a whole ass dissertation detailing specifically what he liked about her writing. Again, just desperately trying to placate her insatiable ego. I wonder if he stayed up all night thinking about it. Blake appears to have trauma around compliments. "Congrats on your little bump. You guys are cute. I appreciate your passion." She seems to take offense as though she feels belittled or trivialized, and she gets defensive and reactive, and I think that's related to Blake's original trauma, which I'll discuss in my next video. Blake, just for future reference, the next time someone pays you a compliment, there is an expression in English. Thank you. That's a complete sentence because the subject is implied. 2 words. Or thanks. 1 word. Merci. Gracias. Obrigado. Spasiba. Thanks is pretty much 1 word in just about every language It's not that hard. But this is why I say that you could kiss ass in the workplace till the cows come home, ain't never gonna do a lick of good. Because emotional labor is more than ass kissing, it's more than flattery. You have to really mean it. You have to be energetically subservient and subordinate. You have to place yourself beneath people, kind of like once more with feeling. And if you think you're going to turn that ship around with compliments, it will probably make everything worse because your bullies can sense the inauthenticity. So in addition to everything else that they already accuse you of, they will also call you fake, which is exactly what Blake did to Justin. Yet another reason you get bullied in the workplace is that you are a true believer. You're the real deal and your bullies are just phoning it in. You may really believe in the principles of your profession, like service to others, but it's not just your work, it's who you are. I'll give you an example. Let's say you are one of those very rare real Christians. I live in a very red area and I could count on one hand the number of real Christians that I've met in my life who actually understood the true message of Christ. It's like that cliche Gandhi quote, I like your Christ, I do not like your Christians. They are so unlike your Christ. But let's say you actually are a real Christian and you go to work with a whole bunch of phony Christians, we all have, and they understandably hate you because you make them look bad. You show them up. So of course, the first thing they're going to do is call you fake. It's so predictable, I could time my watch by it. The text messages about Justin Baldoni from Blake, Ryan, and others are replete with accusations of inauthenticity, especially when it comes to his advocacy work, feminist. Now, I'll talk more about this when I get to their astrology, but for now, all I'm going to say is I could be wrong, but I get the feeling that Justin Baldoni is the real deal. First of all, he's a real artist. He really cares about art. Specifically, he wants to make meaningful art, art with a message. Again, that man don't give a fuck about the Met Gala. Blake and Ryan sound like they don't give a fuck about art. I'm not sure why they're actors at all. I think that they're in the game just for the money, the power, and the fame. They live for the red carpet, point blank, period. And I could be wrong. I don't know much about him, but I get the feeling that Justin Baldoni really cares about women for some reason. Look, I'm a feminist. Everyone knows that. So I would love to sit here and just be like, oh, that fraud, just virtue signaling, paying lip service to feminism, to sublimate his covert misogyny. But from his astrology alone, I think that his allyship is genuine. Allyship is tricky business. Anytime you come out as an ally in support of a community that you do not belong to, you will be accused of inauthenticity and virtue signaling. And Ryan appears to take particular issue with Justin Baldoni's kindness. He invented the nice pool character to mock him. He made fun of his niceness again in promotion for It Ends With Us. And I think that's because Ryan Reynolds would not be capable of genuine kindness if you put a gun to his head. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in all the documentation that I've read, Justin Baldoni comes across as pretty much unfailingly decent. His associate, Jamie Heath, called Blake Lively a monster. A Sony executive called her a terrorist, but Justin Baldoni appears to largely eschew any name-calling. In fact, here is what he wrote his associates in January of 2024 when things were getting really bad on set. He writes about not wishing Blake any ill will. In fact, I want to do the opposite, pray for her soul, for light to fill it. I'm staying as positive as I can. I know I have protection. This is where being a Baha'i matters. Can I send love, not be a victim or curse her, and still somehow show up and direct and act with kindness in my heart? Justin Baldoni sounds like a much better person than I am. If anyone did to me what Blake Lively did to him, I would not pray for her soul to be filled with light. I feel like Blake and Ryan are cut from the same cloth. Peas in a pod, birds of a feather, like I said, a match made in hell. Their text messages expose how dark, ugly, and nasty they really are. So when they encountered this level of kindness in a human being, it really rubbed them the wrong way, because they wouldn't know genuine kindness if it shot them in the face. So of course they called it fake. They just didn't believe it, and it made them look bad. And again, I think Blake is taking another page here out of Taylor Swift's playbook, because by her own admission, she worships Taylor, is obsessed with her, and effectively wants to be her. When she ambushed Justin Baldoni with Taylor at her apartment, after everyone left, Blake texted Taylor, "I know it all comes from what you said perfectly. He just so wants to be in the room, but has to act like he doesn't." Okay, Justin Baldoni very clearly said that he never wanted to be in the room with Taylor or Ryan, because who would? Do you feel like being raged at in the face for hours by Ryan Reynolds? But here we go again with Taylor's pet peeve about desire. She is so pathologically obsessed with money, power, and fame that when she meets another person who does not share her capitalistic greed or her addiction to fame, she doesn't believe it. She accuses them of being fake, of hiding their desire, because she doesn't have enough empathy to understand people who simply have different values. Again, not everyone gives a shit about the Met Gala red carpet. There are real artists in the world who really care about real art. The fame that comes with it is at best icing on the cake, at worst it's a burden. And I think that Justin Baldoni may be one of those. Workplace bullies have 3 goals. Their primary goal is to get you to kill yourself. Full stop. If Justin Baldoni had committed suicide because of what Blake and Ryan did to him, they probably would have thrown a party at their home with all of their A-list friends. They are murderers in their hearts. Their secondary goal is to get you eliminated from the workplace. One way or another, come hell or high water, they want you out of there. Their tertiary goal is to make you so miserable and uncomfortable that you eliminate yourself. You either voluntarily quit or do something so outrageous that you get yourself fired. And that is reactive abuse. It's also DARVO. That way they can point the finger and paint you out to be the bully. At the very least, you're crazy. Here is what Justin Baldoni's co-workers said about his emotional response to being bullied by Blake Lively for months. He got angry and hit a chair. He is also called fussy, huffy, snippy, and impatient, and there are repeated references to his huffiness. It sounds to me like Justin Baldoni, perfectly understandably, was experiencing exasperation at the sabotage of what was the greatest project of his life to date, but he couldn't say anything about it because we all know what would have happened if he had. As I've said many times, do not ever say anything about the bullying inside the workplace. Again, when it comes to workplace bullying, you have been read your Miranda rights. Anything you say can and will be used against you. If Justin Baldoni had ever verbally expressed anything about the bullying that he was experiencing, I'm sure that would have been used against him too. And again, I'm sure Justin Baldoni is a much better person than I am. If anyone had done to me what Blake Lively did to him, I would have done a lot more than just hit a chair. When I was reading all of this, I started wondering why it was so interesting to me. And then I remembered, if you're one of my regulars and you read my essay on workplace bullying, you may recall that back in 2014, I too was bullied by a hostile takeover. I taught a specific class at a school, and my two biggest bullies in the school conspired to get me eliminated from the schedule and the school altogether so that they could teach the class. And it caught me completely off guard. I was ambushed just as Justin Baldoni was. I'm intuitive, so I kind of put two and two together to figure out how they did it. But this case helped give me a clearer picture of how exactly they pulled it off. It must have taken months of smearing and slandering and manipulation, planting seeds, spreading rumors and lies to not only my supervisors and colleagues, but also even the students, and stalking and monitoring me obsessively for the slightest shred of evidence to weaponize as ammunition to use against me. It sounds like that's what Blake Lively was doing in this case. It sure took her a lot of effort to take down this clown that she seems to think is so beneath her. This case is also interesting to me as a real victim of workplace sexual harassment. If you're one of my regulars, you may recall that 7 years ago, I was sexually harassed at the tutoring center by one of the math tutors, a man old enough to be my father that I nicknamed Nosferatu or Count Chocula. I actually made a video about my workplace sexual harassment experience back in 2020, in which I argued that sexual harassment is a form of workplace bullying because it has the same intent. But I deleted it. If you want me to redo it, let me know. Don't worry about me, I'm okay. Both of those traumas are healed. When I first read about the allegations in Blake Lively's CRD complaint, I thought to myself, damn, I guess my workplace sexual harassment experience just pales in comparison to hers. Now I understand that many of those claims were taken out of context and some are not sexual at all. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I believe that the definition of workplace sexual harassment contains the word pervasive. It has to be repeated. It is not a one-off. Like all workplace bullying, sexual harassment is a pattern. Harassment, bullying, these are patterns. It's a series of unfortunate events. It is an accumulation of microaggressions that taken together create a hostile and toxic work environment. However, if I described only one isolated incident that I experienced with Nosferatu, I can already hear the gaslighting and the ridicule. I can literally hear Megyn Kelly and her cohorts just snorting and guffawing and hooting and hollering about how ridiculous my claims are. They're petty and trivial, inconsequential, and I don't have a leg to stand on. You're exaggerating, you're blowing things out of proportion, you're too sensitive. But when those behaviors, however minor, are repeated on a daily basis over the course of a year, they accumulate and altogether inflict psychological harm. That is how workplace bullying functions, and that's by design. Workplace bullies know what they're doing. That's why most of this stuff is almost impossible to articulate or confront. I've been saying for years that when it comes to workplace bullying, everything is intent. And a lot of workplace bullying behaviors are open to subjective interpretation. There's the original intent of the bully, there's the perceived intent on the part of the target, and the bystanders, if any, who witness the behavior may have another perception altogether. For example, the father thing. Justin Baldoni told Blake Lively that he prayed for her father who had passed away. Now here the intent is unclear. It could be that Justin Baldoni sensed that Blake Lively's father's passing was something that was painful to her, so he came back to rub salt in the wound. Intent to inflict psychological harm, masquerading as kindness. Or it could be that Justin Baldoni is a real man of faith. He really did pray to Blake Lively's father to bless the film, and he thought that was a nice gesture for Blake. We'll never know. Anyone, including workplace bullies, can lie about their intent. Did Justin Baldoni openly express his religious beliefs in the workplace because he is a spiritual narcissist who was drawing lines in the sand and otherizing people in order to validate and reinforce his own narcissistic and moral superiority complex? I'm spiritual, you're not, so I'm better than you. Or was it just that his faith brings him a lot of joy and he was like a little kid sharing his toys because that's how he connects with other people? Was he proselytizing, or was it just self-expression? Is Justin Baldoni innocent, or did he have intent to inflict psychological harm with a series of microaggressions on Blake Lively? It remains to be seen. Stay tuned for part 2. Be well, and TK.